You're listening to the Call Kent podcast, where Kent C. Dodds answers questions and gives insights to software engineers like you. Now, let's hear the call.
Hi Kent, I'm Dan Barclay, a software engineer from the UK and a long-time fan of your work. The principles that you share can be attributed to a lot of the success in my software engineering career so far, and I'm very grateful for all the work that you do as an educator. My question for you today is about a principle that helps accelerate my success in building maintainable applications, and that's the testing trophy. The testing trophy, implemented in a React application with testing library, has allowed me to scale client-side applications really quickly by writing tests that are resilient to source code changes and executed from the perspective of an end user. I've most recently been doing this in a client-side application using React Router's memory router from V6 that would render the entire application to the JS DOM and would allow me to interact with it from like an end user would, navigating to a particular route and interacting with it, such as filling out forms or clicking on buttons, and then making assertions about what the end user sees, rather than what mocks were being called with what values. Following a recent migration to React Router v7 and the adoption of server-side capabilities brought by Remix, the docs for testing a React Router v7 app suggest creating stubs for routes that essentially mock your loaders and actions and moves back to a model of testing routes in isolation. This feels like a lot of confidence can be lost in how the entire application works together as mocks override your source code. Given the rise in tooling for improving the performance and reliability of end-to-end tests, such as Playwright and the more recently introduced vitest's browser mode, coupled with the SSR-heavy world that we live in 2024, where Remix, React Router v7, Next.js, and TanStack are now all considered the defaults for writing a modern React application, are we now at a point where we get more value from end-to-end tests, and it should be considered the largest percentage of the testing trophy? This is starting to make more and more sense to me, with them being significantly cheaper to write and run than they once were, compared to intensive tools like Cypress of the past, and better allows us to test logic executed on both the server and the clients with an even better reflection of what ultimately matters, how an end user interacts with our application. I'd be delighted to get your thoughts. Thank you very much.
And that was the call. Here's what Kent had to say.
Hey, Dan, thanks for the question. This is actually pretty timely. I was just having a conversation with some folks on Blue Sky about this, and I would say that first, I think a common mistake that people make is that because a test is run in the browser, that means it's an end-to-end test. At least that was a mistake that some of the people on Blue Sky kind of made. That is not necessarily the case. Just because it's running in a browser doesn't mean that it is an end-to-end test. You can have component-level tests that do run in the browser, and that's what I'm really excited about with vitest browser mode. This is the first time that my tests for components will run in the browser since like Karma years and years ago. And the primary reason for that was because the test authoring experience for components is just so much better in Jest. And even though you're using JS DOM in that environment, it was just such a better authoring experience that it was worth it. And on top of that too, there's just a lot of browser overhead, getting the browser up and running and everything too. The watch mode was way better. So many things. But as you mentioned, the vitest now has a browser mode. It's still experimental, but it gets better all the time, and I'm very enthusiastic about it. I do think that in 2025 we're going to be writing most of our new tests, like most of our tests will move over to vitest with browser mode, and we'll finally be able to test things that involve layout computation. We'll also have our tests run much faster because the by role queries run really slow in JS DOM, but they run very fast in an actual browser environment. There will be a lot of really good things, and we'll have a lot more confidence because it's actually running in a real browser, not a simulated browser environment. So there are still some challenges to be overcome here. Like you can't really parallelize things very well, so you have to do some sharding and different things. But if there's anything I've learned about the Vite and vitest team, it's that they know what the rough edges are and they put in the work to smooth those rough edges out. So that said, I have kind of had a similar feeling to you that my testing trophy has gotten a little top heavy in my own work with Remix, and I don't want to decouple that front end stuff from the back end. And so I do show in the testing full stack applications how to use Remix's utilities for testing routes, and I do think that those are that it can be very valuable. Just like anything else, it's the closer you get to the thing the closer you get to the implementation of the thing that you're testing, the easier it is to test edge cases and different things like that. And when you have failures, they're very specific to the part of the code that broke. But you do lose some confidence by not covering the integration of that piece with the other pieces, which is why integration tests are more give you more bang for your buck. And so, yeah, I think end-to-end tests, like the tools have gotten a lot better to execute end-to-end tests, but still, I do think that the tools will improve on the integration testing side of things. Like, for example, I would say that vitest browser mode is better suited for an integration type test. And there's also actually a tool that, this is kind of tangentially related, but Artem from Epic Web and creator of MSW is currently working on releasing a package called App Launcher under the Epic Web org, which will make it really easy for you to test your Remix or Next or whatever applications to launch those apps and have them be tested under the playwright sort of world and include MSW mocking along with that, which is really, really interesting. So that I'll link to that. It's still pretty early, but anyway, do I think that the testing trophy shape needs to change at all? I think it's possible. I'm still holding out that our integration testing tools and pieces are going to be a little bit easier. I do think that, like, the way that I write my end-to-end tests is I'm mocking third-party calls on the server side already. And I teach how to do that in the full stack testing workshop, and it's all set up for you in the Epic Stack. And so I do think that end-to-end testing has been made easier, and it's been made more attractive with doing more full stack stuff. All of my third-party integrations that I'm mocking are happening on the server. And so doing like component-based tests is less valuable because now I have to worry about my loaders and actions and different things like that. But I actually, in the testing full stack apps workshop, I show how to use the actual loader and the actual action as a part of those tests. So there are things that I think still need to be kind of sussed out, and like patterns that we need to get comfortable with and familiar with before I feel like, okay, no, we need to change the shape of the testing trophy. Now the end-to-end test is much bigger or something like that. It was never really supposed to be like a hard and fast rule anyway. Everybody's trophy is going to be shaped a little bit differently. But the primary goal I wanted to do with the testing trophy was to say that static testing is an important part of JavaScript. So using TypeScript and using ESLint and even prettier kind of goes along with that. And then second, that integration tests needed to be a bigger part, and unit tests needed to be much smaller. So maybe we're going to have an inverted pyramid eventually, or something that stands on top of some sort of static testing platform. But I think I still feel pretty comfortable recommending the testing trophy as a guiding principle for most people developing apps. So I hope that is helpful to you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
This has been the Call Kent podcast. Learn more about Kent at kentcdodds.com and get your own questions answered at kentcdodds.com/calls.